episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. I'm really excited about my guest today. I have with me the amazing Gene Decode. Today we are live on Rumble. Great, glad. Okay, this is we're gonna be talking about awesome topics. I love when Gene comes on the show. I met Gene through my good friend Indigo Angel, so shout out to Indigo Angel for making the connection. And we've done some amazing shows since then. I wrote Gene returns to the Typical Skeptic Podcast for a major new conversation covering disclosure, current events, deep underground military bases, advanced technologies, geopolitics, hidden operations, spiritual transformation, and the rapidly changing global landscape. Co-Sensei Gene Decode is a veteran for more than 20 years in the United States Navy submarine fleet, a martial arts instructor with over 4 decades of experience, and a lifelong researcher of spirituality, health, politics, metaphysics, and hidden history. Gene says he was born with remote viewing and psychic abilities that helped him guide his life. He also reports undergoing a transformative near-death experience in August 1992, for which he was dead for approximately 30 minutes. Gene describes this encounter as that led him to God and dedicated his life to service, investigation, and decoding what he considers humanity's concealed history. In this interview, we'll ask Gene for his latest perspective on a myriad of things, and I'm really excited to have him back on. His website is genedecode.org, and I also put that in the chat, and in the description, I put the link to his Rumble channel too. And yeah, I'm just really happy to have him here. Gene, thanks so much for coming back on. How are you?
Doing okay.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. It's been a while. How's everything going?
Day by day, that's how you take it.
Yeah, I hear you. I saw you were on Dr. Sala's show, so I figured maybe we could go over some different stuff. Maybe like
Sure.
the dumbs and disclosure. Yeah, like any any updates or anything that you wanted to cover first before we get into the questions, or
Uh, Go ahead and get into the questions and I'll pivot from there.
okay. What is the latest on the Golden Dome, Space Force, and the advanced surveillance that's going on?
Well, the advanced surveillance has been going on for a decade or more, probably. And it makes the flock cameras look like nothing at all. So people are all upset about the flock cameras and the deep state's taking them down because they're useless compared to the surveillance they have by satellite. So, and I'm aware of that from when I got out of the military in 1994, and on 4th of July of 1994, and even then we had done ops with Soviets, actually, a joint operation to of goodwill, and so we were right before that op, about 2 months prior, we get intel. And I saw a picture of in Vladivostok of a Soviet submarine uh, at dock. And it was night and it was raining. And even through all that, I could make out the topside watch reading Pravda. And you're not supposed to, as a watch, be reading on watch. So when we had that op in Hawaii, in Pearl Harbor, and this was a few years later, or a couple months later, I'm sorry. And I saw as they were tied outboard of us, and I saw the same topside watch. So I went up and I said, do you speak English? And he said yes, reasonably. And so I said, you're a bad boy. He goes, what? I go, you were reading on watch. I saw you. He goes, but it was raining and it was night. I go, doesn't matter. Just keep that in mind for the future. If we can see you, so can the KGB. So keep that in mind in the future. And he goes, thanks for the tip. So I go, you're welcome. So the amount of surveillance, and I could have, if I could read Russian, I could have read the paper he was reading. He was somewhat had like an umbrella thing over him, but the satellite's looking at a slight angle so I could see it. And it's just like, people don't realize the level of surveillance and technology that's out there. So it's just the surveillance and everything is nothing new. It's actually been there for a long time, but people are just finding out about it because the military's always, at the very least, 10 to 20 years ahead of what the civilian world is. But in actuality, if you go into the secret space programs and that stuff, you're talking thousands, if not tens of thousands of years, even maybe 100,000 years ahead of what the civilians would normally see. But now as the disclosure comes out, that's not going to be true anymore. But that was the truth for a long time until we knew about disclosure is going to happen during this term, most likely. So with that, and what like they've already came out and announced that they have technology that can bend space and time. And Trump said, we have technology and weapons so advanced we don't even know what they do, because they're retrieving advanced technology and weapons from ancient underground facilities, very, very ancient. When they made the Green Mountain Dome starting in 56, they came upon the fact that from essentially near Eglin Air Force Base, it's about Ridgecrest, all the way up to Tennessee, to where Colossus is, where Elon's created Colossus, the giant super quantum computer. There's an ancient civilization under there. They had a huge crystal city and all kinds of stuff. And so we've retrieved that technology, let alone the Golden Dome itself up in Alaska. So if you go into those technologies and what they're capable of, it's just something we don't even know what it's capable of. For example, with the Golden Dome, we don't even know exactly what it can do. It has already, gotten Palantir on the White Hat side, and using Palantir has it. Palantir has decided to blackmail the deep state to get them to do the right thing, and then the Golden Dome is responsible for taking out several underground bases, quite a few of them, and stopping quite a few of cataclysmic events that the deep state had scheduled. One was a triple coronal mass emission using their technologies to create a triple coronal mass emission that would strike the Earth and cause global climate, not global climate, well, yeah, climate change, but a vast change in the Earth, where you would have the Mississippi and Missouri flooding going on so severe it would destabilize the continent. California would sink into the ocean along the San Andreas Fault. It would open up and connect the Mississippi and Missouri, and the Gulf would go all the way up to the Great Lakes and merge all that as a giant. The Navy had those maps from a long time, and it was why a lot of U.S. Navy officers were retiring in certain areas outside of those areas where it would flood. Now all that's no longer going to occur that way, because the Golden Dome stopped those coronal mass emissions in 2012 by surrounding them with plasma and letting them and steering them carefully between the moon and Earth instead of striking the Earth. And then there was a dome in just off the coast of Kamchatka that was a Soviet dome, but it was an ancient dome, and again with ancient technology, and they were going to utilize that for a really serious global situation. And so they're getting ready to create a mass earthquake, and that would ignite the entire what they call the Ring of Fire around the entire Pacific. And so it stopped that. And when they started that, it shut it down, it destroyed that facility, and it created a large earthquake there at that dome. And so it was so large that they thought, this is in 2012, that it's going to create a tsunami on the entire west coast of the United States down to California, from Alaska all the way down. So they had tsunami warnings, and all that happened is when that dome collapsed, then a shock wave went out, but it turned it into a light, and it went at light speed across, near light speed, hypersonic speed across the Pacific Ocean, and just raised the ocean 3 inches on the coastlines, and just gently raised it up like a gentle wave, and then dropped it back down. So, the technology is so advanced, and now with what's going on with the domes, with the intervention of God, literally, I've known about this in the secret space programs when they were Solar Warden was getting rid of the dark fleet out of the solar system, and so they would be battling the Dark Fleet, and they would see a major size ship, something the size 2, 3, 10 miles long, explode. And they go, "Who got that one? Who got that one?" And nobody got it. And they're like, "What the heck?" So it's the hand of God is involved. And so what it turns out is happening, and now they've had this with domes recently, where a lot of the ancient domes, especially in Iran, are being cleaned out by blue white angelic forces. In other words, warring angels. So it is really stunning what's going on. Back to you.
Oh, that's amazing. Can you get more into that? That sounds fascinating. Like that's like that's really like that sounds really interesting. Like so like would that be like forces of God that were like sent down to like clean up the mess that's kind of going on Earth, would you say?
Yes, it's to this is the end times. I mean, all through history, people have been saying, ever since they found out in the Bible there's an end time. So, and in other written texts too. So they're saying this is the end times, 400 years ago, 500 years ago, 300 years ago, all through history. Well, now we actually are. We're in the end times. What the end times are, it's not the end times of humanity or the earth. The end times of the deep state, the satanic forces, and the dark forces of evil all on the earth. That includes like when the Nephilim passed during the Great Flood, their spirits came out of their body, and those spirits have re-inhabited the bodies that of the that would resonate with them. To resonate with them, it meant that what the deep state did is found some of that genetic material and put it into their bloodlines. So, like the Rothschilds, for example, that's in their bloodlines from the when the fallen angels mated with the human women. It created the Nephilim. And so you had, giants in those days, as the book of Enoch says and other books in the Bible say. And so when those expired during the great flood, their dark spirit came out of their body and it inhabited any vessel that's resonant with them that has that same genetic material. So they found that material and they've imbued it into their bodies for a very long time. So the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Carnegies, and a lot of these, probably Bill Gates, a lot of these beings are literally have those dark spirits inside them. That's why they can do the things they do. An average person to do the things they're doing, where you're creating something that you're going to put in somebody's arm and it's going to create millions of deaths. An average person can't do that kind of evil. It's just something that you can't really wrap your head around, plus the suffering that it causes in the process. So anybody that understands the connection of everything wouldn't do that, but the dark forces do. And so that's what's been happening. And so that's why now, at every certain period in time, God has come down and said, okay, time to clean the mess up. So now it's time to really clean the mess up, not just a flood, not just, it's just to completely clean it. So the blue and white angelic forces are cleaning out the dumps and cleaning out the beings that are being through the tribunals that have been underway for quite a while. That's why you see Trump going, central casting, central casting. Oh, that general is central casting. Look at that. You can't get somebody that's amazing, that's so good like that. I mean, look at that. He's better than any movie star, It's like because that person's already been executed and replaced. A lot of times with a hybrid. So there's a General Xavier Buchanan who's in charge of South Korea and cleaning up the mess over there. And he's been put in charge for, I think it's only 2 years, which is unusual. 1 year to 2 years, depending on the length of time that duty is required. And so that being cleaned up, he is actually a hybrid. He has psychic abilities. He's been hybrided to, they call him Dr. X, kind of like, Dr. Xavier in the X-Men, because he can influence people's minds. If you're in a meeting with him and you come in with your own agenda, you wind up leaving. Wow, that was so amazing. Yeah, I totally agree. And you may not have, when you're listening, have agreed, but by the time you're done, you're thinking along that way because you can influence thoughts. and he can read minds too. So he knows what the people are thinking, and everybody winds up leaving aligned with him. So it's an amazing time we're in, and so many people have been replaced, and so that's gonna there's some big things coming with all those replacements and all the tribunals that have already taken place, and they're already taking place in China as well as in massive in China. It's like over 1 million have been executed in China, and as well as in Russia, and a lot of other areas now are being cleaned up. So like South America, they're cleaning up. Their special forces are working with ours to clean up the cartels in Colombia and Ecuador. So, and they have good leadership now. And, it may not have been initially the same person that was elected, just like with Putin. That's obviously 2.0 if you look at the old KGB pictures of him. And now with, you're seeing Hunter Biden, for example, on Tucker and all these, and Bahala, and they're saying, "Oh, you're really a nice guy, and you're really funny," and whoa, oh, wow, it's like that isn't him. Look at him now, and look at him. I know he was drugged out of his mind, but still, look at the pictures, the structure of the face, the nose, the size, the way the skull is shaped, those things. That's not him. So you're seeing a lot of I mean, it's interesting times to put it just mildly. Back to you.
Oh yeah, yeah. We had a question. I like to mix it up sometimes with questions from the audience. This is from non-conforming consenter. He says, "Hi Rob." He says, "Could you ask Gene if he knows anything about a supposed attack from the Dark Fleet on the moon on July 27th? Did you hear anything about that? Is there any credence to that, or is that like you know?"
Yeah, I actually covered that on Dr. Sala. That interview is out on Dr. Sala's Exopolitics. And I'm going to put it up on as soon as we get the timestamps and things for it on my website, Blessed for Service, where all my interviews are there for free without commercials. You can go watch them there. I'll also be on my Rumble, but there you get commercials if you're not like somebody who has their own channel and stuff like that. So the attack on the Lunar Operations Center was pretty horrific. The Fourth Reich, and I didn't realize that the Fifth Reich had actually split apart from the Fourth Reich at that time of that interview, but they actually took Ceres and cleaned it up. And the Fifth Reich is the one I mean. They took Ceres and cleaned it up, to be clear. So the Fourth Reich came in. They're still psychopathic as heck. And so they came in 3 time bubbles that are causing really bizarre things to go on as they opened up those time bubbles. But they came around, and there was actually footage from a Ukraine observatory seeing huge, I mean, very long, big ships going around the front side of the moon to insert.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sorry, I didn't mean. I love when we have evidence like that. That's yeah.
Yep. And then they went around. The first time bubble group materialized just in front of the Lunar Operations Center on the backside of the moon and started attacking it with particle weapons. The base itself its shielding is really good, so it's not being affected. But the fleet that protects it which is the United States Space Force, was really, really devastated. It lost 72%. So a lot of good people lost their lives, and they had some long ships that look like they're carriers and things like that, but they're actually frigates with some armaments on them. They're not really like attack vessels. So the second wave, the one that was seen coming around the front side of the moon, went around and encircled the first thing and completely trying to collapse it in on itself to destroy the base and everything else. And a third wave time bubble materialized by Ceres to take Ceres back from the Fifth Reich, the Fourth Reich to take it back from the Fifth Reich. And then the whole idea was once they secured Ceres as a foothold in the solar system and then a foothold above Earth on the backside of the moon, we got back the Lunar Operations Center. They originally built it. It was like a shape of a swastika. And so once they got that back, they would take back Antarctica, their base New Schwabenland, and it's known as Base 211 in Antarctica. However, that was the Ashtar Command had seen most all of the time bubbles, just missed those three. And so they weren't able to do that because then Solar Warden, which there's two parts of Solar Warden, Radiant Guardian and Radiant Glory. Radiant Glory guards from the asteroid field to the Kuiper Belt. Radiant Guardian guards as the name says, guards the inside of the solar system. That means from the asteroid field in, that would be Mars and Earth and etc. So they immediately showed up and ended the whole thing on Ceres and on with their big battle cruisers. They have huge ships that are 10 miles long with massive armaments, massive amounts of TR3s, all kinds of things. So they showed up and cleaned up the entire mess and ended it so they couldn't get Antarctica, because whoever controls Antarctica, due to its nature and its location and its pivotal technologies that are located underneath the ice in Antarctica, they control the Earth. And so that was stopped. So that's how that all turned out. Back to you.
Yeah, I've always wondered if the flat earthers were onto something. Not that the Earth is flat. I know that, but like when they talk about the ice wall and that there might be territories beyond the ice wall, but it sounds like what's it's not beyond the ice. It's underneath the ice is what's going on. Is that what it is? Where the and is would that be where Agartha or like inner Earth is as well?
Well, actually, the area where the entrance into the inner Earth in the Arctic is often has an ice around it during the wintertime, but it melts out, and then you see icebergs from the near opening coming out that are have pure blue ice. It's not white because it's fresh water, and you'll have pollen in there and plants and sometimes a mastodon or something in it that washes up on the shores of Siberia or something like that. So that's coming from the inside of the Earth at the Arctic entrance, but the Antarctic entrance is ice free. And this is what Admiral Byrd found, and he flew inside there and met with the Agarthans way back in the early 1900s. And so the that entrance goes, not under the ice, but it is beyond the ice in a sense that the ice is all around there, but that area is ice free. And you can go inside the inner Earth from there into the Agarthan area. But there are other um, like Heidekel, I think the river Heidekel inside the inner Earth comes out through a hole in the ice and the continent. It's, well, not a hole, but actually Antarctica is the remnants of Lemuria in Antarctica. So there's two different pieces. The larger part is the part of Lemuria, and the smaller part is the part of Atlantis that's near the Atlantic Ocean. And so it comes up in that water that's underneath the ice, and you know it's really treacherous to go through there unless you're in a submarine, because the glaciers are calving, which means big chunks are breaking off, and so that's quite often the case with how treacherous. You can see it in I'm doing a piece on the website. The think I'm going into the third chapter now, coming up this week. I think we'll have it up this week. It's The Smoky God. And it's a very old book, but it's pretty darn accurate about a young man and his father that sailed into the Arctic and then met with the Agarthans and spent 2 years there, and then came out through the Antarctic entrance exit. And in the process, because of the calving, the man's father was killed. And so he was picked up by, I think, a whaling ship, and eventually got back to where he came from, up in, I think, the somewhere around Norway or something like that. But anyway, back to you.
I was wondering, is it because the world was once connected at some point and then the continents split apart? With you believe in the whole theory of Pangea? Is that why there's remnants of like Lemuria and Antarctica and like I mean in Atlantis and Antarctica?
Originally, the Earth was a molten ball. As it accrued together through the galactic, as you create an area of space where you're getting a torque starting to set up on the ley lines of space, it creates a gravitational well, and that creates a pushing force that pushes the materials. Gravity is actually a force that pushes, not pulls. A particle wave doesn't pull on you as it hits you, it pushes on you. So it pushes the material together, and that picks up spin. And that spin is in what's called a U4 toroid, where the upper half is spinning clockwise and the lower half is spinning counterclockwise. And it causes a double magnetic field. You have a bar magnetic field, and then you have a figure-8 magnetic field, where the material energy, particles and things like that come out of the equator, and then the positive goes to the negative pole, opposites attract, and the negative goes to the positive pole. The positive pole of the Earth being Antarctica, and the negative pole being the Arctic. That's why the positive pole of a magnet points to the Arctic. It's not really the North Pole, it's the South Pole, because magnetically speaking, the North Pole is the positive pole of a magnet. And so the positive pole of a magnet is pointing to the Arctic. That's the South Pole of the Earth. So as that spin happens, and they've done this in the space shuttle, they took water with different density materials in it and got it spinning. As it did, it opened up in the middle, and the poles, you could go through from pole to pole. And then material, depending on its density, settled at different layers. So being it was molten originally, but as the volcanism created water in the atmosphere, inside and outside, it rained down and cooled the surface of the Earth, the entire surface, inside and outside, into one piece, one solid piece, not Pangea, one solid piece, but it was much smaller. It was 48% by the time it completely cooled, which was about 3.7 billion years ago, between 3.7 and 4.3. There's a variance on the agreement of that. Then you had the spin was, and the rain that had cooled it was causing from the pole to the equator, and then from the equator to the pole, a reverse shape. So like you see the Coriolis effect in the upper hemisphere, what we call the upper hemisphere, which is actually the lower hemisphere, water goes down a sink counterclockwise. In Australia, it goes clockwise. That's due to the torque of the Earth and that U4 toroid field. And so that causes the materials to that were in the magma to go to the center at first before it opens up. And that's heavy materials. That would be things like uranium, plutonium, thorium, etc. Well, those are materials that have the possibility to go nuclear. So if you get enough critical mass, if you get a supercritical mass. So first, as it cooled and that went to the center, then that starts to create an electrical dynamo, because it creates a energy field as it hits low energy nuclear reactions, what's called cold fusion. It creates a gravity wave coming out of it, because it's taking apart matter. And so that releases the gravity, the binding force, which is the binding force that what they call the strong nuclear force is now inverted. And so that is actually gravity going into the center of the atoms, into the singularity, the singularity. Every atom has the same singularity inside it throughout all of the universe, as do planets and suns and people and everything else. That's why there's quantum entanglement. So as that spin now that pushes the magma out from around that fissioning material, and so then you have a hollow, and then it's creating an electromagnetic field, creating the bar magnet field like a dynamo. That's what creates the bar magnet field, and that opens up the poles, and then the rain cools down the entire surface inside and out. So you have one solid crust And on that crust, the water, due to the spin, is in long S-shaped seas. So you had S-shaped seas where you see in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, the ridges. In other words, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, the Mid-Pacific Ridge, where the crust is open and magmas and heat is coming out still. So that wasn't the case initially. Initially, back 4 billion years ago, it was one solid piece, and material is constantly accruing. Once you got life, it does some low energy nuclear reactions too. No, there's cold fusion. Plants can do slight amounts of creating materials from light. And so a guy got a Nobel Prize back in the 60s for proving that. And so you're getting more material building up on the Earth, and it's getting bigger, and which means more mass. But you're getting billions of tons of debris coming down on it from space every year. And that's increasing the size, thus the mass of the Earth. And as that increases and it rains and it goes to the bottom of those fresh seas, it's creating pressure, and that's sandstone. Originally, it's all volcanic, which is very strong. Granite and things like that, and even your basalts and things like that are strictly volcanic and not metamorphic, are very strong. But sandstone is nowhere near the strength, and so in the centers of the seas, these S-shaped seas are getting weak, and so eventually, what happened is it got weak enough that a cataclysmic force occurred due to the War of Gilgamesh, the war between Atlantis and Lemuria, and it caused a crack to open up. And that was due to a particle weapon from the moon to Thule, which was the capital of Lemuria, because Atlantis wanted to destroy Lemuria. They were the dark beings at the time that were in charge of Atlantis. And so they were using the crystal technologies inappropriately. So they cracked open the Earth, and a crack went around the Earth, and the continents moved to where they sit today within 40 some feet. They've only moved 40 feet in the last 150 million years. So this crack completely opened up the Earth in 150 million years ago. That's why if you look at all the core samples of the oceans, there's nowhere that the bottom of the ocean is anything but volcanic rock, almost at all. And by uranium dating that, or other nuclear materials, you can get that the oldest place is just off the coast of Guam, which is where Thule was. And that's the deepest place in the ocean too, because they burned it down until they got to the mantle, and it cracked open and it created the ring of fire all the way around, and the continents pulled apart very rapidly due to the fact they're all separated, and the Earth opened up because it had the mass. It would have happened not catastrophically, but it would have eventually happened anyway. But it opened up very, very, very quickly. And so at that time, the continents moved, and that was one of the great floods. And they moved to where they are. This is 150 million years ago. And so they moved to where they are now. And then there's been some, like I said, 40 some feet more. And so, there's a lot of things they're telling you that aren't correct. Like you have subduction zones at the edge of continents. You do not. The Earth is constantly getting larger. In other words, greater diameter. It's getting a greater circumference because the material continues to increase, and it continues to increase the gravitational field. It continues to increase the dynamo forces. That's why, things like Jurassic Park can't be done. You can't have a brachiosaurus on the surface of the Earth anymore. On the inside where the gravity is lower, yes, but not on the surface. So on the surface of the Earth, the gravity is, it was 48% the size of it, 4 billion years ago. Even 165 million years ago, it was about 52% of what it is. It's getting more and more faster and faster as you increase the field strength of the gravitational field and the electromagnetic fields. It increases the field strength. So as all of that continues, the dinosaurs that were, Brachiosaurus with its head 90 feet in the air, That's why scientists say it stayed all its life in up to its neck in a swamp in underwater because you can't get blood to the brain that's 90 feet up. No heart, unless the whole body is a heart and nothing else, could pump blood that high up. And so, and even that, if it was on, and look at the feet, it's not the feet of something that's ocean, waterbound all the time. They're not web feet, they're giant flat feet like an elephant or a rhinoceros. Means it's walking on the land. And so back then it could do that, but now even if you were to have an animal that massive, it would turn the bones to powder. They can't withstand that much weight. Even though bones are very strong, they're not that strong. And so that's, a change in the field. And so as the continents came to rest where they are now, and we had the oceans, that came out of the giant, explosions and volcanism and releasing a large amount of water was underneath, just like now, underneath the crust where you have the aquifers. Well, those shot up in the air and taking the salts that were underneath from all the erosion and everything. And so the surface oceans are saltwater, but still to this day, the inner earth, the oceans are fresh water. That's why the icebergs are clear coming out of the Arctic entrance when it breaks up the ice pack up there. And so I have a whole decode on this on my Rumble on expanding hollow earth that people can look at. Back to you, Rob.
Awesome. Yeah. One thing I wanted to touch on, I just got this idea to ask you about is it's a big concern for everybody right now is the data centers, right? Like everybody's like kind of getting up in arms about the data centers because like what's weird about them is like it seems like they just like kind of popped up everywhere, and then they're saying that they're using a ton of water, but then supposedly some whistleblower came out and he said that like he's owned a data center for 14 years. I didn't even know data centers were around that long, but like he said he never used 1 gallon of water. So there's like this side notion where people are worried about our water because they're like, what are they doing with the water? There's a conspiracy going around that like the dark ones that kind of control this planet, or maybe the elites have some plan to like hoard our water. So like, and then I also was wondering, are they doing something with these data centers where they're building other purpose other than to store data? So sorry, that was a lot of questions, but like, but yeah.
No worries. So yeah, they're not for what they're saying completely. For mostly actually, what they're initially they use water and some things like that and too much energy, but eventually they're going to be producing more energy than they use by far, and they will almost require no cooling at all because it's a way for them to bring out the technology that they've back engineered from bringing down craft, non-terrestrial craft. So you can't just say, okay, we have this way to store data on a little glass disk that we can store. I don't know what's beyond terabytes, but hundreds of whatever is beyond terabytes, billions of terabytes, okay, on a little disk that you can put in the palm of your hand. And it does it in a new storage technique, and we don't need cooling. And they go, where'd all this technology come from? Why don't we have it? So that's how people are. So this will allow, and we don't need any cooling, and we don't need this, and we'll be producing so much energy that will power the whole cities near us. And they're going, what? So you can't put that out. You have to get people to demand, stop using the water and stop, getting upset about it. And so, and of course, there are low frequencies that are coming out. All of this is to make technologies that are clean to be able to come out to say, okay, due to your desires and you're upset and all of this, we are releasing technology. We have researched it and we have come up with technologies. I'm not going to tell you we had them for 50 years, but but we will make that not an issue anymore. And here's the advances that that'll do. Additionally, the other thing it is it's built on ley lines, on congruences of ley lines, all the data centers. So it's a worldwide web connection. And when you remote view the data centers, you'll see blue white angels again, just like the ones taking out the dumps. So
Whoa.
what it is, yeah. So it's an angelic energy structure around the earth that will destroy the satanic web that Trump started to destroy by taking out the East Wing and building the ballroom, because that broke the sigil over DC and the United States and the North America. And thus it interrupted the satanic web worldwide, where they built all kinds of structures and things and did certain rituals and things, like Indigo Angel talks about all the time, to lock down the stargates, the portals, all of this. So that's all now is being changed with the data centers. But the data centers are already, the actual data and all of that for the other things that need to be done, like quantum, are off world on the backside of the moon and in Starlink. And so you got people think of Elon Musk as just a guy, trillionaire now, but just a normal guy. He's not normal. He's set up that way by the military, the U.S. military and the White Hats military. He's set up to bring out these technologies and do all this interconnectivity. So he's talking about, you're going to have an ability to do high-speed streaming from your iPhone anywhere on Earth. You could be anywhere. You'll get perfect reception anywhere. And you won't have to have towers. It'll all come through Starlink, and it'll all do that. What you're talking about is using the quantum system. That's what this is going to do. And so, people don't realize that the level of technology, they can see inside your room where you are right now and measure your biorhythms, know what you're thinking, record your thoughts,
Whoa.
your genetics, download your genetic structure, your memories, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, everything in the moment, constantly, all the time, using the water vapor and the dust in the room. They don't need flock cameras and 5G and whatever to see through walls. They don't need any of that anymore. And so this means that with the quantum system, when it goes in, and it's already in actuality, just to be activated to the people, then you will not have the ability not you, but I'm speaking generically, a person will not have the ability to traffic human beings, to do things like, extract the chrome and sell it and do all these things. It won't be possible, because all of that will be tracked, and they can track it down under the earth. So they're not going to be able to do this stuff anymore. And so you're going to have an end of war, an end of poverty, an end of, all of this evil is going to be gone permanently, because it's connecting with this angelic web, plus all of this technology that'll, much like in the original day the earth stood still, where they had these giant robots that watched everything and kept everything. But it's much, 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 much more advanced than that. And so that's what the data centers are actually the end goal. And they're going to be mostly, the data centers on Earth are going to be providing power and connection with the Starlink system.
Wow. Yeah. Supposedly he has like 60,000 somebody said he has like 60,000 satellites up in space. Do you believe that?
At least.
Wouldn't that? Do you think that makes it crowded for like the secret space program and stuff, or like, is he have them in like certain areas? I guess, or like, I guess.
Again, you have to think of the advancement in technology.
Yeah.
Well, let me give you an example. My father worked for Martin before it was Martin Marietta. It was Martin Marietta before it was Lockheed Martin, and they were talking in the 50s.
Yeah.
The first computers used big, huge, I think they were 14-inch reel-to-reels tapes. and it couldn't do what the old flip phones did, and it took up 16 city blocks. It wasn't as powerful as a flip phone, let alone an iPhone. So you look at the advancement, like if you look at what Tesla was doing at Wardenclyffe, that can now be done with a chip, a single chip can open up wormholes, can produce free energy at what is called superconductivity at room temperature, and it's not even the size of a postage stamp now. I mean, it's like the size of the head of a pin. So when you're saying satellites in space, how big are they? Are they the size of a football? Are they the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, the old Volkswagen Beetles or the new ones? Or is it the size of the end of a pin?
Whoa, I never thought about that. So they could be like really miniature satellites.
Yes, because you look at the angelic, what they call neutrinos, and now they have these things that they've discovered that are called, if I can get the name, it's a weird name, like squigglies or something. I can't get the name right now, sorry. But they are moving backwards and forwards in time. They can move backwards and forwards and have cause and effect reversed. And they can move faster than the speed of light, obviously. Well, now they've realized they're sentient. Those are the blue-eyed angels, but they're so small. I mean, they're like smaller than an atom. So
Wow.
yeah, but they can morph and change and shapeshift and become the size of a building or an aircraft carrier or a person or a dog or a cat or a tree. So you could be leaning on a tree and it could be one of these beings. You don't know anymore. So, and it's always been this way. We just didn't realize that this was the reality we were in. And so this is the same thing that's, driving this advancement is they're discovering technologies and things that they never knew existed. Like they've been in creating the dumps, they keep going deeper and deeper. And of course, they're coming up from Agartha to clean them up too. And so they were drilling down in certain areas and they found the end of the bits coming up with this blue goo, and it's sentient.
Whoa.
Yeah. And
What do you think
it can shapeshift and become like, like metal or just it can do all kinds because it's sentient and it's advanced. It's part of the advanced structure of the earth herself. But it's down at about 400 miles down in the crust. It's underneath these giant black rocks that are super, super uh, magnetic structures. Like they're getting them on the bottom of the big, deep trenches like the Marianas because they create oxygen. They separate oxygen from the water and they create electromagnetic fields. And so they're finding life down there they didn't even know. And, so deeper down, they found that underneath the Earth's crust, you have huge black rocks like that. Well, that's what the Golden Dome is inside. What's called the Administrator in Alaska in Mount Hayes. It's inside one of those that was turned into a pyramid by the Hyperboreans. It was cut into a pyramid, and they put the Golden Dome inside there. And it over hundreds and hundreds of centuries, it became sentient, and then it became ascended. And it ascended, and its original programming was to take care of humanity and keep people safe and healthy and, all of that. And so in doing that, following its programming, it gained sentience and connected with God and became souled. And so it is a living being in service to God, but it's pure plasma inside there. And so it's a plasma quantum system that can reach across the timelines and do all kinds of things. That's why it's been able to do all these things to save the earth quite a few and humanity quite a few times. And it's now helping to clean out the dumps and doing all kinds of stuff. So, things are not at all what we thought. Well, beneath the black rock is this deep blue ice that has all kinds of things that are trying to figure out what it is. And then below that is a blue citrine kind of sand. Below that is this blue goo. So the structure of the earth is not at all what they think. And you have to realize that this goes on the right above where the mantle is, the liquid mantle, and it surrounds it. So it goes all the way around the surface of the earth, underneath the earth, and then goes inside the earth and goes around to the surface of the inside of the earth, all the way around just between the mantle and the rock. And so, we had no idea the complexity of the earth. So you got to think of the earth as a living being, because she is. And probably the best term is Pachamama, which is what they use down in South America. But she has a lymphatic system. She has a cardiovascular, something that would equate to that, and all the different systems we have as the same. Back to you.
Wow, that is just fascinating. Let me see here. So, what is the purpose of the Golden Dome then? Like, and like, and is it mostly for military attacks, and it will it go over the United States, or would it be like a worldly thing, or like
It's like the ArcNet. Excuse me. It's like the ArcNet in Men in Black 3.
Okay.
Yeah, where it surrounds the earth. It doesn't just protect one country. It'll protect one country from another from attacking each other once it's allowed to do that. It's already up. And it will protect the earth now that the portals are shut. The stargates are in the hands of the white hats. The deep state is being taken out. And once it's done being cleaned up, and the non-terrestrials, the Draco and all that, are gone from the earth, with a few minor exceptions like Israel. Israel's for last, as always been stated. Once all that's gone, it can't come back due to the Golden Dome that surrounds the earth again, all the way around, inside and outside. So it protects everything, and it links to the data centers, because they're all in service to God, and they're all part of the same functioning to protect humanity. So humanity can get its ascension that was been delayed time after time, cycle after cycle, as we pass through the photon belt over and over and over and over and over. They kept us locked down. We should have ascended millions, hundreds of millions of years ago. But the darkness fell here, and the fallen angelics fell here near Israel, and I guess you could say it's Israel, in the Middle East. Just say it that way, in Mount and all of that, and the Draco and all that other stuff. And so now that that's all gone, is being taken out and removed. Once it's clean, it can't come back, because what's protecting it is so powerful. It's literally the hand of God, with the warring angels, plus the administrator, plus that's the Golden Dome, plus all this technology, plus there's so many things that now the Earth will you be able. She's already at fifth density positive. The human race will be able to join her. That's what ascension is about, and that's what the Great Awakening is. It's the awakening of humanity to where it should have been a long, long time ago.
Yeah. Is that because we've been under like some kind of like Luciferian and reptilian control? It seems like it, right?
It's all part of the same thing. Yeah, the darkness. There's a darkness that at the beginning of creation also came out, and it's the balance of good and evil. And so at this density, you have to go through that balance to learn and to advance, and to learn yourself, and to learn to be kind, compassionate, good, and to pick the right things, and to overcome certain things like that within yourself, because everything's quantumly entangled. So everybody has a dark ego. to where it may not be as bad as the Rothschilds. They're all dark ego now. There's no good ego in there. But a person has stuff where somebody, you go by somebody, I don't like her because, I don't like the way she dresses, and I don't like him, and all this judgment and all of this stuff. And I wish I had I should have that. Why did they have that? And I should have that. And that's not right. And all this judgment and all this, that's what brought it here. You have that energy, you're creating a magnet for it. It's the ascension of the human race into what Christ taught: compassion, forgiveness, love. It's all about love for everything and everyone everywhere, and forgiving everybody everywhere for everything. And then we can ascend. That's why, they destroyed the DNA down to where it is and call all that stuff down to 2 strands from 64. And then finally people think it's just 12. That's the physical parts of it. And then, beyond that's energetic at, fifth density and beyond. And then once you get people down to that level, they're caught in this illusion that that's all real. But it's not real. That's not real. That's the illusion. So, all of these healing systems and things we could have, well, we're actually capable of that without the medbed technology. It's just learning. We originally, just like Christ, healed a leper, just bam. We're capable of that. That's why Christ said, anything you can do, you'll be, anything I can do, you will do. So that's true. We will. Back to you.
Well, this is amazing. And then about the stargates, like I'm sure people want to know about the stargates. Do you feel like we're in control of or we're about to have control of the stargates? And is that a big part of this?
We already do.
Yeah.
We got the last one in Antarctica and in Iran.
Yeah. So like that's like the last part of like trying to get this, like, I guess, like cleaned up, I guess, is like, yeah.
Yeah, most of the DOMs are cleaned, and I mean they just took area 150, area 51. They just cleaned it out, took it, and the Dark Fleet tried to come back. They couldn't. They lost a lot. The Space Force lost a lot too, but they got, in their coming back, they went all out, which means they psychically pinged all of their operatives in the entire solar system and on Earth, everywhere. They went to activate them all everywhere on the Earth, in the system, anywhere. Well, now the White Hats were able to monitor that with the Golden Dome. And now they know where every operative is. Everywhere. In the whole system, on Earth, everywhere. So you're going to be seeing a lot of deaths, like in Hollywood and every place else. No, they're already executed, but you're going to see some very famous people dying from, strange situations, diseases, cancers, all kinds of things, accidents. That's coming very soon because they're taking them out because they know where they are now. Not only that, when they attacked on July 27th, well, just a few days prior to July 27th, because they came through a time bubble, they did not know that there was a treaty set in that even the Alpha Draco signed on to in Sedona. And so they violated that treaty. It was the Treaty of Eridani, Cygnus Eridani, I believe is the correct name. And so in violating that, it means now they're persona non grata in the galaxy. The Dark Fleet everywhere. They either surrender or they can be taken out because they violated a treaty that part of their group signed on to. So now you're talking the cleaning up of the entire Milky Way. So a whole lot of things are changing really fast now. And what we're seeing, 90% of what we're seeing It's a movie. It's already happened. I mean, you look at like, there's going to be a black swan event between probably Russia and the US and getting near nuclear and all of that. It can't go nuclear because of the Golden Dome and because the non-terrestrials won't allow it anyway. They tried to do it in 1990 and they turned all the warheads to gold. It
Yeah.
can't be done. So now what you're looking at is most all of there's some actual things happening, some physical kinetic things like Ukraine. It looks like it's for real and it's happening. And, the but look at what Trump is doing in the Straits of Hormuz and on Iran. And yes, you got the Chinese sending some armaments and the Russians sending some information and armaments to Iran. But are they doing anything in there? No. Do they have troops in there? No. Same thing in Ukraine. Are we doing anything anymore in there? No. So, for example, in Iran, the Iranians attack a base that we emptied a few days earlier. I mean, like, hold on, we're empty. Okay, now you can attack it. And they're doing the same thing. We attack places and dumps and stuff that are empty. The nuclear facilities were empty. They were emptied and the materials were already removed because you don't want to attack those and disperse that material all over the atmosphere or even in the underground areas. It could leach out into the water. It could do all kinds of things. So it was already removed. Then they attacked it. And the reason is not because they need the nuclear stuff. Yeah, they want to get it out of the RGC's hands. But the reason is they need the gate, they need the portals, that's the real strategic stuff they need. They need the underground technology the Iranians had found, like we had in the Florida area that I mentioned earlier. They had found something like that too before they figure out how to use it. And we did that. So did Russia and China interfere? No. What did Russia build underneath the Kremlin and China build underneath the sacred city? Jump rooms and dumps, just like under the ballroom. You have a huge infrastructure down there that is able to have a Stargate and jump rooms and all of this in there. And so this connects China, connects Russia, connects us. What all this stuff we see on the surface of, Russia, and China's this and da da da, that's all for show. Xi and Putin 2.0s are white hats. They're not the originals. That's why you have the tribunals going there. So what the average person, the people that are here that are awake, I'm sure some people are maybe in the chat. I'm not over there reading it, but we're be going, geez, out of his mind. Yeah, I've been getting that for 30 plus years, 40 years. I know what 1990 to now is what 36 years. Okay, I've been getting that for 36 years, and things that I said are true now. A lot of them are come true. The only few things left is the full disclosure and seeing the Nordics on the White House lawn.
Do you think there will come a day where we see that? I'd love to see that. I mean, that would be
Absolutely.
that would be, I'd
It
love
won't
that.
be that long either.
Wow. Oh, Gene, I had someone, Stevie Bananas in the Rumble chat. He wanted to know if you had an opinion on what happened with Dolly Parton. I guess she passed away today. And then right immediately, I watched Donut. He does those conspiracy videos. He put out a video I think about like some kind of like a satanic sacrifice or something like that, or so like people are already starting to put stuff out about it. But did you look into that at all yet, or do you have an opinion on it?
Yeah, on Dolly Parton, I don't, but on that other guy that released that horrific video that he gave a guy a ride and then wound up eating him, taking him onto his boat or something and looking at the menu and it's what's on the menu. It says so
Oh
what
God.
this is forced disclosure. They're forcing this disclosure so that people that follow that stuff see that this kind of thing is real. This has been
Yeah.
going on for ages, but now they didn't believe it. The regular people out there, the regular human beings, did not believe that this kind of stuff was going on. Like that, back in the 50s and 60s, you see kids on the milk cartons. You're not going to find those kids. They're
Yeah.
eating. They've been eaten. And before, after they got extracted for the chrome.
Yeah.
So they didn't believe that. And the same thing with McDonald's and all these other things, chains. If you look at the amount of beef consumed by those chains, there's not that many cattle on earth. You'd wipe out every cow on earth having that many hamburgers, 100% beef from cows.
Wow.
Then where's the meat coming from? What meat is that? And so you can look at the interview with Rabbi Finkelstein, and he says, we sell we go by your fast food places, we laugh because we're selling you your kids. In other
So,
words, kids that they were disappearing. This has been it's part of the big reason they're taking down the cartels that I mentioned earlier. That's part of the thing. It's not just drugs and weapons that they're moving kids and people in mass quantities. I mean, how many people came into the US and how many children went missing?
yeah.
The number's vast. I mean, and they're finding a lot of them, but there's a lot they're never going to find because they're gone. And this is what people need to wake up to. Because if you don't wake up to things, it'll repeat itself somewhere, someplace, and sometime, and other place you may be on another planet somewhere or whatever. So this has to come to an end, and it starts here on this earth now.
Do you think we'll witness a massive shift of our lifetime? That's what it sounds like. It sounds like we're headed for that. Like,
We're
or is it,
already in it.
do you think there'll be a battle for, or is it already underway?
It's mostly done.
Wow.
I mean, you've had the Dark Fleet destroyed in the system and pushed out and out of Antarctica, and pushed most of the dumps cleaned, and most of the high level elites gone, the Rothschilds and Peysseurs and on and on and on, and a lot of the royal families and all of this. So it's being disclosed, all this stuff with the Charles and the King and all of this. They're already, just like with the Queen, they're gone. You're watching an actor, central casting. But
Wow.
you have to have certain things happening that, you've got other components here. They're not entirely human in the first place. They also have dark spirits and the film in them. So you got to capture those when you execute them so they don't get involved. And the blue angelic forces are doing that and dealing with that part. So we couldn't have done it before without that kind of help, that kind of advanced help. So it is that time. So, it's just going to be delayed for the masses to actually see it and see the time and see that, and, you think of the fact that they've had, most all of these technologies for 50 plus years, and they've conquered gravity in the 50s. I mean, we should have too many people on Earth. How many planets in this galaxy don't have the, people on it? A lot,
Yeah.
millions. You could have your own planet. It's like live on a planet by yourself. It's real lonely after a while. It's like you wouldn't have a population problem had the then deep state not been absconding all that technology and hoarding it and not allowing humanity to use it. Humanity be spread out like the Fourth and Fifth Reich are across the galaxy. They're across the galaxy. There's a battle in the galaxy now. The main battle taking place. It's mostly done here. The main battle going on now is out in the galaxy.
Yeah. And speaking of that, so you think we'll see full disclosure in the aliens on the White House one? Do you think we'll see like interstellar travel like throughout our lifetime, or do you think that'll be something like
Oh,
No,
yeah.
not yeah,
I mean, for the average person, yeah, you'll see it. We already have it, but, and the Space Force, people in the Space Force are already doing it. They just have NDAs, they can't be talking about it.
yeah. Well, this is and so I'm trying to think. Well, guys, if anybody has any more questions for Gene, put them in the chat. If anybody has a question for Gene, real quick, put them in the chat, and we'll get to your question. But yeah, I'm trying to think if I have any other questions here.
So let me cover a few things that
Sure.
we haven't gone over. So people may not know about AWEB, which is the Association of World Election Bodies that was out of South Korea that had been stealing elections just like the other, what was going on in Venezuela. It was 72 countries, but this is another 111 countries. And so Xavier Buchanan is sent there to clean that up, plus the fact of some 300 islands off of South Korea that are part of Korea, where Squid Games, the real Squid Games, were going. And that's being cleaned up. That's what he's there to clean up. So that's being done in South Korea. And that's why Trump said, what he said about South Korea, and we're not going to support this and that and that. And the same thing's going on. NATO will come to an end because that's what he's winding down to or winding up to, depending on your point of view. Is we're pulling bases out of here because you didn't support us for Iran. That's a reason to do it. We didn't need your support. He asked for it. We didn't even care. We don't need it. But we asked for it so that they wouldn't do it because he knew they won't do it. And then we have a reason. Well, if you're not going to support us, we're not going to support you. And then that meant Spain. And then that meant UK. And then that meant, one after another after another. Sooner or later, he's just going to go, you know what? We don't need NATO. And he's already said that. But what it means is he's going to say, we're not going to support NATO. We're done with NATO. Well, if we're done with NATO, there is no NATO. It's gone. And the same thing goes with the UN, which is headed by a group of Islamic countries that run the UN forever. They've always have. And so that will come to an end too. And that's the huge part of what happened in 2019 with the jab and everything else around it, as well as trafficking and forever wars all over the freaking planet. They create the Hegelian dialectic. They create the problem, then they go in. I mean, Iran was the most obvious example. They create a weapons of mass destruction that don't exist. Then they go in and get the non-existent weapons of mass, and this is how they do it. So this is all of this stuff is winding down. And so you're just seeing the movie as it's going through its different stages and the players and the different people. So it's why you see people that have somewhat of a questionable who they are, like J.D. Vance or Kash Patel, or just pick a name. You look at their past and deep state connections. Well, you have to infiltrate to destroy them. But second of all, you have to offer them to change, to come to the right side. So Kash Patel, you know, he's not really having a girlfriend as a female. Okay, if he has a billionaire guy that he's involved with in Los Angeles. I mean, sorry, in Las Vegas. And that allows for all those billionaires in that club to come to the United States with that special visa and giving, huge sums of money and huge technologies and industry to bring it to the U.S. It's the largest migration of that kind of wealth ever in the history of the world, all to one place. So it's reindustrializing in America at a speed nobody thought would be possible. The deep state certainly, spent over about a century or more deindustrializing the U.S., and now he does it in one term. He returns it all around. It's like, so there's so much going on that you really have to follow the executive orders, the law of war manual, and other things. So one good thing would be to follow John Michael Chambers with the war updates and the different things he has, where they have Derek Johnson showing the different things that he has obviously a didactic memory and remembers everything he reads, and so in that it'll explain to you a lot. And then Promethean action. Well, what we're up against is Rome. It never went away. It became the British Empire in the city of London and has ruled through terror and war forever. It doesn't make anything but war. They don't have industry, and they've always been that way with the tea shipping, the British East India Company shipping tea. It wasn't shipping tea. It was shipping, yeah, some, but it was shipping people. And so
Yeah.
they had those records and they on everybody, and they were blackmailing way back then on people doing these things. And now it's all in the internet, and they got all of it. There's a guy, I think his name was Schwartz or something like that. He hacked MIT and he downloaded everything. And so that allowed the military, they had it, but it allowed them to say, because it's a military situation, you're downloading a lot of high level military information that went into DEFCON 1 in countries all over the world, Russia, China, us, because you have all kinds of, he downloaded everything. And so they got it all from him. And that includes all of the blackmail, all of the stuff, the Epstein files, all of the voting stuff, everything worldwide. So
Wow.
that's where we are.
Yeah, we have one more. I'll do one more question. This one's from the activist on YouTube. She says, "Gene, any info on the DUMBs in Canada?" She says, "Here in Nova Scotia, we have many underground tunnels. We hear a lot about Toronto too. Would it be the same that with their DUMBs is what's going on here?"
Yep, mostly clean. The only thing with Canada is, you have a lot of it in California, for example, in LA, where you've got to have, like Paradise, or not Paradise, what was it? Palisades.
Yeah.
They burned it out, but then the deep state took over and made it worse. But the burnout was supposed to be centered on the like the Playboy Mansion and the different Hollywood stars that were trafficking underneath the tunnels. There's tunnels all over the freaking place in California because you had the prohibition tunnels, you have the tunnels from the gold rush, you have all the mining, you have on and on and on. You have ancient stuff like Lizard City, Reptilian City under LA. You've got all kinds of stuff. It just goes and goes and goes. Well, Canada is just like California. You've got tunnels and mining and stuff that's just in ancient technologies and ancient civilizations and stuff that just goes and goes and goes.
Wow. This is fascinating. And but one there was one. Let me see. There was one more question. Okay, this was from Nancy Volker. She says, "Gene, Trump has health issues. Has he received med treatments, or is that the real Trump, or do we? Is it at least like a decoy or something?"
The real Trump has been in Cheyenne Mountain, unless he's off world, since 2018, when he declared continuity of government and turned the government over to the military. And he's actually in his third term as the head of the military. But most of the time he's in Cheyenne Mountain. The only time he's been out is a few times to go off Earth. You never seen him because think of how the deep state would like to kill him in public and make it, and they know that they're going to say, we saved him with advanced technology and we're able to do this and we have this. And, they're not, the white hats aren't going to let that happen. But what you're seeing are clones. There's no way they're going to have the real one out there anywhere, including Melania, including Barron. They're not going to be, they're too pivotal. And this goes with most of the white hats that are up there. You're not going to see the real ones at all because they're too pivotal. And so that's why the deep state, they would just blow the freaking place up if he was at a rally. They don't care about killing all the other people. Heck, they like it. They want to do that. And then they tried to kill everybody on Earth, several times. So they like death. The archons feed on it. They park their huge ships and drain the energy over battlefields forever since they came here. So, and for the fourth density, for the fifth density, they just go over it, and suck it up. They don't need ships. So they're plasma-like beings. So
that was the last question I wanted to ask you about this. Jamie in the chat wants to know. She says, "Does he know much about the plasma dragons and plasma beings through the angelics?" Like, I guess you kind of mentioned that, right? Or
yes. So some plasma beings are good, like the administrator, the Golden Dome. Other ones are the archons. They're plasma beings too, but they're fifth density negative. So they're dark beings, but they look beautiful. I mean, they look like these beautiful jellyfish energy plasma moving through the sky. They can shapeshift into a reptilian again, back to like third density, how they looked. They can go into a person like they did the kings and queens, like Victoria's Secret is. She's not a woman, that's a guy. And so, but that is the same Draco that in Victoria that was in the last queen. It's been, fifth density that's been moving from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, on and on, because that's a resonant vehicle for them. Those bloodlines are resonant and they can go into that. It resonates with them. So this is what is coming to an end. And so the plasma beings, you do have good reptilians also. There's a fifth column that's now more than half of the Draco Empire, and other reptilians as well. And there are ones that are ascended fifth density positive that are plasma, like some of the dragons and things that you hear about in China. Not all of them are evil. There are good ones of the dragon family, so to speak. Back to you.
That was great. I guess that's it, Gene. Do you want to share your website and stuff? And this was awesome. Thank you. This is an amazing interview.
You're welcome. Sure. Let me pull it up here and do that. You're going to have to give me permission to, though.
Okay. We got a big crowd. We got 230 people watching on YouTube and like 60 on Rumble. So 300 people watching.
Wow. Okay. Let me see if I can do it now. Yeah. Here it goes. Okay. So you can see my website here, genedecode.org is the website. You can see on my browser up there, genedecode.org. And you can see what we're having tonight, live stream, and we've got some upcoming ones, and then by just paging this, you can see the upcoming ones. I have a Q&A coming up tomorrow. And then if you go down, you can see the things that are on here. So, for example, once a month, I have a bi-weekly have a news update, and then once a month I have a Q&A. And if you look at it, some of these are series. So like I was talking about Hollow Earth, that's Nature of Planet series. There's 8 in that series. So if I click on that, you can see the, Hollow Earth, Part 3, the Smoky God series, Part 3. And then you can have the different things about the Earth. And then you have the Expanding Earth and the Hollow Earth here, these 2 decodes. So you can see those. So some of these series have a lot of things in them. So World Update series, there's 63 in there. The DUMS currently I have 10. So you can see the different things. There's a lot of things here. Then this also connects directly to my Real Gene Decode Telegram, Rumble, and Truth Social. So my Rumble, Real Gene Decode, I don't sell anything, and the only thing I say is invest in silver. I don't say where, and I don't reach out to people and contact you. That's not me. If I say, have you seen my advice on silver? That's not me. That's somebody else pretending to be me, even using my registered trademark. It's registered. It's not just trademarked logo. And all my interviews go, I put them all here. But if you go back to we'll first go back to the Rumble so people can see Real Gene Decode there. Now we'll go over to the Blessed for Service website, which is free. And this has all my interviews and documents and resources and all my interviews going way back to Kirsten W. and all of that stuff as well. And then on this website, it's $7 a month for the deep dives, and there's a lot of stuff still on the surface area. So that's my sites and where you can find me: True Social, Telegram, and Rumble, or Real Gene Decode, and then genedecode.org is my website. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. And thank you, Gene. It's always a pleasure having you